So at this point, you should have your coffee cup traced, and it should look something like this. What we're now going to do is just set the fill to the cup and the saucer at slightly different values so we can distinguish between the two of them. So by selecting one, just select the coffee cup, and then go up to the top, click the drop down and set the fill. For now, we're just going to work in grayscale for the sake of simplicity. And pick a relatively light value, and then set the plate at a value that is perhaps a shade darker. And if you see here, I can see right through this area, this negative space. And that's why we use the Pathfinder tool earlier. What we're now going to do is just use the ellipse tool, and we're going to make a circle that matches this one. So if you just go over to your layers panel, and so we don't grab anything by mistake, we're just going to lock the cup temporarily. And then go up to the top, and click and drag. And then select the letter V, and just grab it and alter it so that it's placed where you would like it. And so that we can distinguish what's happening, we're just going to set this at a slightly darker value. So if we click the drop down, we'll go up a shade, or even 2. And already you should see that your cup is starting to take a sense of form. Next, what we're going to do is just work on adding some simple highlights to give it a little bit more shape. Now, keep in mind that you should be continuously labeling things just so you can keep track of the moves that you're making. And then we're just going to lock these again real quick so that we can start to draw on this image without messing with it. So zoom in, and if we look back down here, there's a little bit of a highlight here, and there's a definitive highlight right around the curve of the cup. So we're going to go in and add these. And to do that, we're going to take our pen tool, and we'll start by just drawing a very basic shape on the corner right here that kind of matches that arc that we see down below. So I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to turn off my fill for now. And then I'm just going to alter it. Get rid of a couple of extra anchor points. And then we're going to set this as a highlight. So we're going to click the drop down and set it to a pretty light value. Zoom out. And I'm just going to tweak this a little bit by grabbing some of the handles. All right, so already we start to see that there's a sense of highlight on the handle of the cup. Next, we're just going to add a subtle highlight around the rim and the side of the cup. So we're going to use P for pen, and we're going to make a curve right along the side. So you should be able to do this in roughly 2 strokes. Turn off the fill. Hit the letter V to discontinue. And now what we can do is just tweak this path a little bit. So if you hit the letter A, I can click on an anchor point to activate it, and just grab it and move it. And that looks pretty good. So now, once you've done that, select it, and we're going to go up to the top. If it doesn't show up, this little toolbar right here, just double click the object and go up to the top. And we're going to set the stroke on this. So for the stroke, it's a square within a square, and we're going to pick it to be a white highlight. And then we're going to set the stroke. This is the width of the stroke. So if we boost this up, it gets really wide. But right now it looks kind of awkward and kind of unnatural. So what we're going to do is drop that back down to maybe 3. And then this toolbar right here that says uniform defines the shape of the stroke. So if I click this drop down, I have a bunch of different options to choose from that determine how the stroke will look. Some of them look better than others. So I think for this instance, because it's a very smooth object, the top one, which is just a smooth arcing curve, works the best. The other option that you have is right here that says basic. This is the type of stroke that you're making. And there's a bunch of different options. So if you click the drop down, you can make it look like charcoal, a regular line, really heavy, really small. So there's a lot of options to play with. On top of that, if you click in your library, which is this little stack of books right here, it gives you a list of other different options that you can play with. And if you click that, a little dialog box should pop up and give you more options. But for now, I think the simplest thing to work with is just a basic one. So we're going to stick with that and set the stroke and up the stroke with a little bit, so it's got a little bit more oomph. And zoom out. And it's looking pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is just make another line just to delineate. There's a little highlight right here, so we're going to put that in too. So using the pen tool, click once, drag, click again, drag, just to get something that mimics the curve of the cup. Then hit V and click on the object again to activate your toolbar at the top. Up the stroke, change the stroke width, and if you need to, you can pull this up a little bit, stretch it, so we start to get something that looks like it's taking form. And I think this looks a little bit too bright as is, so I'm just going to drop it so it's not quite as vibrant. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is just add a couple of really basic shadows to the saucer, as well as a subtle highlight. For this, it might be easier to just turn off the cup briefly. So we're just going to temporarily turn this off and turn off the subsequent marks that we've made. And the reason for that is if I want this line to continue behind the cup, it's easier to draw it and then turn the cup back on than to try and draw around the cup. So we're going to use the ellipse tool. And if you need to, you can use this again as a stencil just to capture that basic shape. So click, then we're going to drag, and then you can hit A to activate your anchor points and just start to manipulate it a little bit so it lines up and matches the curve of the original saucer. Then hit V, click and bring it back up to your saucer right here. Place it. And then because it gets a little bit darker, what we'll do is set the fill of this at a slightly darker and turn off the stroke. Make sure you label this path. And it's good to just periodically go back through and label things. And now we're going to turn the cup back on. And as you'll see, because we did this most recently, it's on top of the cup. To fix that, just grab the saucer shadow, click it and drag it and place it right above saucer. And if you need to tweak it to get it to feel more natural, feel free to just drag it, place it, adjust it, and it can be fiddled with endlessly. All right. So now already we're starting to get a sense of depth and shape. The next thing we're going to do is just add a little highlight on the side of this and a shadow underneath where the cup is. As we see here, there's like a kind of awkwardly shaped shadow. And because of the curve of it, we're not going to use the ellipse tool to capture that. Rather, we're just going to use the pen tool. So click on the pen tool. And because this is deactivated already, it should be fairly easy. And I'm going to start at the midpoint just because I find that to be easier. And click and drag. Come up to the curve. Click and drag. Turn off your fill as you're drawing. Click, drag. Grab a handle if you need to, just to tweak the curve of it. And obviously the top looks a little bit awkward, but that's fine because this is going to go behind the cup. So we're not going to worry about that right now. Once you have your shadow created, just hit the letter V. Make sure you label it. And then we're just going to drag it back up to the top. And then set the fill. And then just to move it, we're going to drag it and place it right underneath where it says cup. Now obviously this cup kind of looks like it's floating because there's no shadow underneath the bottom of it like there is here. So just go in using your pen tool. And if you need to, just lock that layer that we just made so it doesn't interfere. We're going to make something that kind of just mimics that sense of shadow. Probably do the same for that handle right here. So use the pen tool. Then if you need to manipulate it, just hit A, grab a point. I encourage everyone to zoom in on this because it's a lot easier to see. And then zoom back out. If it looks a little bit too dark, you're welcome to change it. But once we put a cast shadow right over here, it should look a little bit better. So we're just going to use our pen tool again. Make another little curve. Click V, and then that looks a little dark, so I'm just going to select it again and drop the shadow down on it a level. And what you should have is the basic outline of a cup. Now, obviously, you can make this endlessly complicated, but for now, I think that if you've gotten to this point, you have a good enough sense of what it is you need to do just to begin rendering an object by starting with the very basic tracing and starting to build more complex features on top of it. So once you're done, you can just go up to the top, hit save, and stick it in the Dropbox.